managing the overall relationship and business outcomes. Hello, I'm Dennis Chapman, founder, president of the Chapman Group, and currently on the board of directors of the Strategic Account Management Association, SAMA. SAMA has launched a very high-powered credentialing program to enable strategic account managers and leaders of strategic account programs to optimize their skills around best practices and process. This video is meant for you to have a better appreciation on what is contained in this program. I'd like now to go into some of the critical areas that we will cover in this one-day program. I would argue, and I'm a little biased, that probably the most important part of any strategic account manager program is the entire relationship management component. I believe it starts there and stops there. This program will focus on three key things. First is understanding the business and personal drivers that are affected by what I call the new economy. An example of that is many organizations today are guided by and predominantly affected by the leadership of the Chief Financial Officer, the CFO. So knowing how the change in the economy affects your customer is critical for the effectiveness of any strategic account manager. The second key component of the program is the importance of relationship management and what it really is. Relationship management, some people may think, is intuitive. However, I would argue it's more process-oriented, learned process around executing and driving the right team behaviors. In this program, we define what those behaviors are. We help the participants understand where their current gaps are in their current relationship network. We also help the strategic account managers, and I'm using SAM as sort of the global acronym here for these type of team leaders in strategic account management. We're also guiding them in understanding what the difference of a partnership with their customer is versus an encounter. And finally, helping them learn how they can create a higher degree of trust level with their customer as one of the primary goals. Another component under this whole knowledge of relationships within the program speaks to the SAM as an effective relationship builder. What are those actual activities, strategies, processes that they need to do to facilitate a higher type or level of relationship with their account? We cover in the program, for example, a focus on managing the zone. In a hierarchical pictorial of the relationships from top to bottom, we sometimes refer to that in the program as high, wide, and deep. What are the differences in that area, and what is the zone of those relationships we predominantly work in or we would like to work in? There's a predominant zone for operational relationships, and there's another predominant zone for decision-maker influencing decisions. How are we effectively executing in all those zones? And your team members, as part of this program, will learn precisely how to execute in that area. The next focus area of the program has to do with the process. By definition, process is predictable, repeatable, measurable. Some of the process that we will share is a process very critical with three components. One is the overall engagement process of how a team leader and a team should actually effectively engage with the customer. Second is, how do you translate that engagement process into creating, and this is a big goal, more loyal and committed customers? Okay, how do we do that? And what does that look like beyond just traditional satisfaction metrics? The most critical is what we cover in the program is how do we measure loyal and committed relationships? The second key component is how do we effectively communicate with these contacts and our clients around the business relationship. And when I say communicate, is the alignment of what's important to different levels of your client organization to what you have to offer that you might call your value proposition. I sometimes like to call it the economic value proposition. For example, participants learn what they might be speaking about or conveying or collaborating on with a senior level executive in an account could be very different than what's executed at the operational level. We share with the participants how important it is to somewhat be a little amoeba-like or chameleon, that maybe when they're in a relationship or meeting with a senior level team of their client, that the conversation and communication in that meeting may be much different than an operational level meeting at their contacts. I've heard from many clients that they want their strategic account managers to really be strategic and not so tactical, and actually still achieve the revenue business outcomes that they need to achieve. The next key area that we focus on in the program around this whole topic of process is actually the relationship management process itself. What is the prescription for the process? How does the team leader, how does the team members engage or cause engagement with their customers at different levels, high, wide, and deep? What are the core components of this metric-based account plan that can help us measure the improvement or state of the relationship management and the business outcomes we've outlined? And how do we encourage collaboration between the clients and the supplier as part of the relationship management program? In this particular area, our key focus is more around the process and some of the how-tos, when executed effectively, help us create, and I would like to offer up the importance of this, measure the transition of moving customers from maybe satisfied to certainly more loyal and committed. What are those activities? What are those best practices? What are those communication techniques? And what are those economic value adds that we might need to do to, again, create loyal, more committed customers driven by the leadership of a strategic account manager? The final area of focus is this whole area around accountability through measurements for the team leader, and maybe in some cases even the customer. As part of the program, we demonstrate specific examples of dashboards that a team leader should be utilizing and certainly tailoring to their own situations or supplier-client relationships. I've often heard the term, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. If you can't manage it, you can't improve it. We offer up in the program a section on RACI, which is a business acronym for responsibility, accountability, consulted, and informed. It's important for team leaders as they're managing relationships, both at the external level with their client, but there's also an internal component to know who on their team should best be performing a specific activity. We also talk about in this program for leaders to really key in on coaching, we talk about creating time. We talk about the importance of creating time and eliminating time wasters. And one prescription we offer is the importance of delegation. And how can a strategic account manager delegate as low value activities versus executing their high value activities? A core component of the program speaks to delegation, understanding who is responsible, accountable, who should be consulted and informed on specific activities within the account management process, and adopting this methodology and maybe even a simple template that we give an example of within the account manager program. And finally, when it comes to measurements, and when we talk about achieving business outcomes, measurements is critical, we offer up examples and working activities around joint scorecards. This ability to discuss and measure value creation and innovation, and how joint scorecards are playing a very critical role in business relationships today. We speak about how important it is because in many ways, suppliers are scorecarded, but the scorecard itself is not a joint scorecard. So the ability of leaders to coach their strategic account managers in how to create more collaborative, joint, and mutually constructed scorecards where both the supplier and the client are being measured by each team is very critical. This is a one-day program. The content is rich with activities, and it affords participants a lot of time to have discussion around their own personal situations. In strategic account management, it's always been stated that the leaders are the most important critical factor to make these things go successful. I challenge you now that once your participants go to the program, you'll appreciate your optimum value by collaborating with them, in some ways even testing them, challenging them in how they're going to be different, executing some of the more right behaviors, the right best practices, as they all relate to managing business relationships and business outcomes in your most important strategic accounts. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you and your team at this workshop.